Hello, everybody, and welcome to the February 2021 Open Office Hours with your host, Guinnessstache, and with the ever so famous Amos here along by my side. And we have the founders, as always, Žiga, Tomaž, and Branimir. DJ Branimir, what's going on, everybody? Yeah, I heard that song the other day on the Office Hours, Branimir, for on the bass line, and I was just thinking, like, man, they need to get some DJ Branimir music on there instead, like, you know, like gonna show them what real music is.
Yeah, you know, actually within the Trace Labs team, we have 3 DJs who've been releasing music. Actually, very proud of that.
Well, yeah, blockchain doesn't work out. You always got EDM by your side, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, we have a lot of talent, but actually the greatest music comes from the community. So it's great to have famous Amos with us once again. I guess he could segue us into this discussion with one of his lyrics.
I don't know if the community is ready for that bomb yet.
Yeah, that's right. We gotta wait for that. Someone just corrected my image. They said there's a new version of that graphic with xDai
really?
instead of stake. Oh, sorry guys, can't keep up with all these community art. All right, let's open this up, guys. So the first question is it's always usually the first question of these things. It's kind of like one of those one exchange things. Žiga talked in the previous open office hours about making progress on the exchange liquidity front. Have things improved even further? Can we be confident about a T1 exchange soon? So with everything going on now, you know, we got Fireblocks involved now, you know, so we got some big money looking to get the token now and whatnot. And I'm assuming they're going to want some bigger sources of liquidity there too. So is there any progress you can share on the exchange front?
Yeah, so at least the Fireblock thing and also the Alpha Sigma Capital is something that you can see from the outside. We see this as an important progress forward because there are larger institutions and buyers which are also looking into adding Trace and Trace token amongst their portfolios. And this is perhaps one of the most important steps so far towards reaching additional markets for Trace token, which in the future is going to allow for better liquidity and better access towards the Trace token. And it's an important step. This is something that is visible from the outside. Perhaps more our internal view into the matters right now is that the tier 1 exchanges are considering Trace as a very important contender, but it's again very much impossible for us. Actually, it would be wrong if we actually knew how close we are to be listed on any of the tier 1 exchanges. This is something the tier 1 exchanges would never share. It never was accessible to us, whether we were listed on smaller exchanges in the past or whatever progress we see right now. It is something that the most tangible steps are the ones who are only the exchanges themselves are kind of privy to such information. But to an external eye, it's quite obvious that things are moving. Fireblocks has added Trace token to be supported for any bigger buyer to enter into the Trace. So that's quite an important kind of expansion of the market for Trace token. Alpha Sigma Capital report, which I'm sure that many of you have read, evaluated OriginTrail as a very, very competitive project. In many ways, OriginTrail was positioned amongst the most kind of advanced or perhaps the most mature projects in terms of adoption. And it's quite visible from reading the report that the next step towards advancing the whole ecosystem definitely depends on increasing the token's exposure to additional markets. And this is where we can read from the report that the token ecosystem, the OriginTrail ecosystem, will also catch up with other perhaps bigger ecosystems that do not have such traction, do not have such exposure, such adoption as OriginTrail has in the mainstream quote unquote markets. And this is also one of the main missions of OriginTrail. It's not only about creating value within the crypto ecosystem. It's actually bringing value using tools that were kind of delivered within crypto, but use those tools within mainstream supply chains, which actually account for 75 trillion USD of yearly kind of global GDP. So it's a huge thing and a very valuable bet. So a lot of movements when it comes to providing additional market access, and hopefully we will see tangible stuff, and tangible by tangible stuff we mean listings sooner than later.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's about that time, right? We get the jobs coming out soon. We got there's going to be a lot of demand for the token, so it's good to see. And I don't know if you know this, but I actually helped a community member the other day put some liquidity in PancakeSwap. So we actually have a Binance Smart Chain TRAC token now. So woo! So anybody who uses Binance Smart Chain out there, there's a little bit of liquidity for you in case you didn't know that. So that was just yesterday, actually.
Yeah. But that's a very good development. So not only the thing that you're mentioning right now, also last year, Uniswap, although the whole movement created some undesirable effects within the Ethereum gas ecosystem or gas market, fee market, but it was very much evident that in the future it's going to be the communities, it's going to be the utility that is going to be the biggest, that's going to create the biggest impact, which will then help meaningful ecosystem, meaningful tokens to expose to bigger markets. And perhaps the pancake, what is it, pancake? Yeah, I'm not following all the food projects anymore, but I hear all the buzz around the Binance chain and everything. This is something that was, for us, it's very much positive, because we see that there might be other agents which are going to see the value of the OriginTrail decentralized graph and might add a token into their own ecosystems without our direct interference. And we expect to see more of that in the future.
Well, we had a conversation about this the other day in the community too. And what's interesting is there's so much more of these decentralized exchanges coming out, but they're also coming out on the different platforms, right? So xDai has HoneySwap. As much as we joke about it, Binance Smart Chain has Pancake. So what I could end up seeing over time is, as the OriginTrail is connecting to these different ecosystems, these different blockchains, you might see like a Cardano swap or something, or you might, a Polka swap, for example. So these decentralized exchanges will be an easy way for people who are living in those ecosystems to really to acquire tokens to even use on their nodes. So it's even I think over time it even could become easier than going and making an account on a KuCoin, taking the coins and moving them out. Like you could just trade right on xDai on HoneySwap, and you have your xDai track, your xTRAC for your node. So it's cool that we're seeing a lot more of this now, and it's becoming a lot more advantageous because of how cheap it is to use some of these side chains as well. So cool. Further collaboration with baseliners, ? They seem to like the new source of knowledge, which could be useful on both sides. So we watched our everyone's favorite Branimir the other day, dropping it like it was hot on the baseline office hours the other day. And what's funny is there's always been this idea that baseline and OriginTrail are competing technologies, and I think what you did ever so gracefully, which you normally do, is you showed that both ecosystems really can use each other. They both have value, and they bring different sorts of value to each other. And I think the baseline, from watching the office hours, seems like they really started to get that. They really saw a lot of value in there. I'm not sure about the guy with the Silicon Valley thing. I didn't know what that was about, but generally 99% of it looked pretty promising, and it made sense. Someone just said we loved Bob. Yes, Bob really seemed to understand, the UPS guy. He seemed to really understand the value of the standards you were talking about with GS1 and everything. So after doing that office hours, do you see a lot of value in the future between OriginTrail and Baseline as far as working together, or even more collaboration coming?
Yeah, that's first of all, thanks for the nice words. I think it was a very interesting session, and I enjoyed it because it's not that often that you get a chance to speak with knowledgeable people, actually a larger group of them, about the problems that we're tackling. And And yeah, I think to a certain extent I did manage to explain, because from the first interactions before that and the first sort of discussion, it was a bit well, I think on the side of them not being actually sure what OriginTrail does, and it's okay. I think they're not to blame too much, because it's not that easy to understand. But yeah, I think it was a very useful discussion, and coming forward, there will definitely be things that both OriginTrail as the ecosystem can bring to the baseline ecosystem, but also vice versa. It yet remains to be seen, obviously, in terms of applicability, where exactly and what type of solutions these protocols particularly fit together. Obviously, in my mind, it's much more, it's totally clear for OriginTrail, but for baseline, we're still yet to learn ourselves. And so, yeah, we've started this communication and really engagement together, and we will be working together on as they look into creating standards through the baseline community. We'll be helping out in capacity that we can, and as well we'll be looking at how the baseline community can also help the OriginTrail community. But overall, I think the point that they also understand how important the standards are, I think that's pretty sort of straightforward, because for anybody who's ever really done some tangible work within this industry when it comes to data sharing, this is a kind of an obvious thing. You know, I would basically, you know, dismiss working with someone who wouldn't recognize this as one of the most important things, because it's literally like we're using a standard right now. I'm speaking English. This is not my main language that native, whatever the word is, yeah, as you can see, obviously. Yeah, I mean, we all need to somehow find that common ground, and that's really with the standards. And when language is like one thing, these things have been evolving for decades, centuries, or millennia. But like standards, they are kind of they have a shorter life than that, and there's, you know, technology emerging non-stop, and if everybody's going to go their own way, it's never going to interconnect. It's never going to have some interplay that's useful, and that's where OriginTrail is really strong. This is where one of the key differentiators between OriginTrail and everybody else in that sense is that we focus on connection as the first, sort of the most important thing, synergy being the main topic here. And synergy means both in terms of approaching data as linked data and interconnectivity in that sense, connecting systems, but also synergy in terms of protocols. You know, what makes sense to work together. If any of the technical audience knows that the protocol stack for internet is really a synergistic protocol, synergy of a lot of protocols. Like yeah, the 7-layer model has, well, you can go into every one of these layers and find many different protocols within there, and that's only going to be evolving. We'll see more and more protocols, some of them be adopted, some won't. And yeah, we're definitely looking into how, you know, what things can work together, because obviously you cannot build everything on your own, and you shouldn't, because it well, technically doesn't make sense. So it's really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how the stuff progresses. We'll probably participate some more in those open office hours calls, because yeah, I definitely feel that there is a lot more we can show, and we can learn from each other. So and that's the whole point of what we really want to do, and the key principle there being really that connectivity is what is, and synergy is what is going to bring this whole ecosystem move further.
Right. And I think
yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and you know, one time I remember you, like, I think 2 years ago, you and I, it was some talk we had briefly where basically, and you hit the nail on the head, was that it's hard enough getting a lot of these technologies by themselves implemented by companies or enterprise or to be adopted. Never mind when you're mixing two of them, right? So, you know, you get these people, and this even goes back to the things when people say like, hey, are you integrating Chainlink? Or are you integrating this? I mean, this is still a lot of like, unmanned territory, a lot of this stuff. So it's hard enough to get companies on board understanding these decentralized protocols and these technologies, but never mind when you start adding other unproven technologies on top of it. So when people say like, oh, you're going to use baseline, it's like, well, let's first make sure we can get this technology kind of more mainstream and adopted, and then you can start worrying about if these other standards are going to take off, or these protocols are going to take off, for example. So I mean,
it's absolutely need driven. So where you see a need from a particular problem in either a particular company or an industry, like for example the rail industry, you approach with tools, and these protocols are really your tool set. And it doesn't really go the other way around. It's not like, hey, we have this cool whatever blockchain, and then let's try and apply it somewhere.
Right.
It just doesn't work like that. So we will definitely be looking into what types of tools or protocols or systems we can apply to problems when we see that match exists, and first of all is validated by a relevant problem that someone is going to invest time in, and that's where obviously you need to know the tools. So part of it is really everybody learning about new technologies and capabilities, but also not being that solution looking for a problem type of guy, but really the other way around,
Right.
finding solutions for existing problems.
Great. I'm gonna get a little selfish here. I'm gonna have me and Amos are a little selfish here. I had one of my questions, and then he has his own question after this. So sorry guys, it's one of the perks of hosting. We get to put our own questions in, but this one's actually more from me. As we know that Starfleet Chain will have the ability to mint knowledge tokens. Based on the recent article by BSI about being able to issue certifications for security tokens, could you envision Starfleet Chain being used at some point as a platform for projects issuing their own tokens, including security tokens? Because if you go back, I think it was about December, BSI, I think they were awarded the ability to issue certifications for security tokens in blockchain space, which is pretty interesting. And with SFC, it's going to be so malleable, and it's going to be fast. It's going to be very cheap to use. Do you envision other projects at some point, like much like you're minting knowledge tokens? Are we going to see? Do you envision other projects building on top of Starfleet Chain, or even issuing tokens, and maybe even security tokens, which BSI could certify on the ODN, for example?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thought, and thanks for putting the question in. And it opens up kind of a discussion on Starfleet's potential in the future in general, right? So obviously it kicks off as a OriginTrail community chain, which is there to support the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph in the best way that's possible. It allows us to enable the knowledge tools, including the knowledge tokens, and issuing that. But at the end of the day, we have a blockchain that is capable of supporting the functionalities or the features that other blockchains do. And in my eyes, it's whether this will be within the realm of interest of OriginTrail community, either by expanding the OriginTrail community to include other projects because they see value in leveraging the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph, then that creates a greater incentive to be a part of the Starfleet as well in the sense of kind of joining in and issuing or leveraging features of Starfleet Chain to your advantage. That being said, OriginTrail kind of community doesn't consist only of technical tools or technical things that we can utilize. Consists of organizations and individuals, and those organizations and individuals might, like you mentioned, rightfully so, offer certain things, services, which could be utilized within this within such an environment as well. So it's like all these things are within the realm of what kind of is a potential of OriginTrail Starfleet to become in the future. And the good thing is that we can see it develop in so many different alleyways, and we do have this potential. And I say we as OriginTrail community can decide and see where really we want to kind of utilize that and where we want to drive it, and what type of trust and integrity can we build around making sure that these things are functioning the way they should. So like in short, I'd say yes, but of course, and then all the rest kind of thoughts follow in that manner.
It was kind of just, head in the clouds type of thinking, but I just imagine it opens
but
the
it's
door for
like
a lot of.
in all ways, and all the kind of the good approach is always to follow it that way, right? Is to see how can we leverage it, and what can things that can be delivering value for different stakeholders, which might be currently present within the ecosystem or might be present in the future. So in that sense, it's a very interesting thought.
So I'm gonna take the floor right here, because I was doing some research on my own, and I almost passed out when I read this. I don't know how I don't know how it slipped by me, to be honest with you. So as we all know, we're doing that whole Oracle situation where the OriginTrail decentralized network is operating as an Oracle, feeding off-chain data into the Hyperledger, for the milk payments and whatnot, issuing verifiable credentials. So when you look at the OriginTrail technology stack, you see this thing called the data to knowledge services. And it seems to me, when I was digging deeper into this, Branimir stated that this is basically the nodes going out to the internet, grabbing data, turning it into a verifiable source of information, pulling that back to the ODN, which, as we then saw, can be used in smart contracts. So basically, this is the OriginTrail nodes sweeping the internet for verifiable knowledge, bringing that knowledge back to the OriginTrail decentralized network, which can be used in smart contracts. And I have to ask, is this related to the whole RDF, SPARQL, all integration, the semantic upgrades coming for Q4, Q3?
It's a very good question. Short answer is yes. A little bit longer answer is it's part of the evolution of the decentralized knowledge graph. It's really the ability to create additional services that are distributed across the network, because a lot of the different data is distributed across the network. We have to remember that the decentralized knowledge graph is not just the publicly accessible graph. It rather, as the main principle being really linked data, is that every single node in the network might possess some knowledge that others do not, and therefore has a unique opportunity to run certain services or code, if you simplify it, where combining this knowledge that they maybe uniquely own and some of the public knowledge coming from either the public graph or somewhere else, which can be attached to the graph, is where basically there's a lot of these additional value can be prepared for the applications on top. So, and part of this stems from, again, going into the standardized direction. So RDF and SPARQL have been a W3C set of semantic web initiatives for a long time. There's a lot of tooling that already speaks RDF and these particular tools. And that basically means that all of this existing tooling can then be integrated with the ODN very easily. So so that extends the features of the graph in terms of how you connect with other things that are already there, but also with making the network itself be capable of doing more complex tasks rather than obviously exchanging information and storing data, but also being able to, while you have this data, do something on top of it. Some of the examples would be, for example, reasoning. Like if you look at RDF, one of the kind of key things looking at it there is that you can integrate both ontologies on the data, and then you can understand you can make the machine understand some certain things. And when it comes to pushing this data towards the smart contracts, that's the other, let's say, group of services that we can we would classify as data knowledge services, is pushing a verifiable proof that a smart contract can verify through the information that exists on the ODN. Because the traditional, let's say, common approach of oracles is you have a bunch of machines that are presumably not owned by the same party, and these bunch of random machines would input, let's say, the value of whatever trace token into some Uniswap contract, and it does that every once in a while to keep the value updated. And that is much better than relying on one server and just like having this attack vector. But then again, it increases cost. The more of these nodes interact, the costlier it is. The more trustworthy though, but still, it's there's trade-offs there. While when you go from the ODM perspective, you already have a piece of information that is verifiable with all the necessary fingerprints on the chain. And from that perspective, it for a lot of applications, it might be completely satisfactory to have just one of these publish it, because it's already available on the chain. The chain already knows about it, and if you provide the right proof, you don't need 50 or 20 or how many different actors forming some sort of a consensus in the smart contract. That means 20 transactions. However cheap the chain, it doesn't really seem like the best, let's say, route. So there's a lot of these cases where for example, Oracle services will be implemented to the data technology services. And yeah, that's definitely something where, again, it's not just blockchain where this data makes sense to enter. Quite often, actually more often, it makes sense that this data goes into a system, a different system than a blockchain, and that system already knows RDF. There we have it. So
yeah,
that's the long answer.
That answers everything. I mean, that's really amazing. I think the community themselves can piece together how massive of an accomplishment this is, that OriginTrail has this. This is just one additional service. This is just one service, and this is the scope of entire projects itself. So
True.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's only possible because you have a good base, and the good base is really the decentralized knowledge graph. Because once you have everything so well interlinked and connected with all the verifiable proofs, then adding services on top is, well, you kind of have 80% of it done already, So that's really the core powerful thing, and this service layer is going to bring a lot of new exciting things, I believe, to the ecosystem. I can't wait actually to see.
And there's so much data we don't even know exists yet, that's not even invented yet, that this could be used for. Things that we don't even realize can be offered. Like, that's the crazy thing when you get your head around it. Like, especially when we start to see the IoT world develop, right? Say we have smart cities. There could be stuff being offered on the ODN yet that we haven't even thought about. Like, it's crazy to think like that. But again, head in the clouds type of thinking, but it's in the next 10 years. I mean, what other data is going to be coming out of these nodes and shared on the network? And you can fall down a rabbit's hole when you think about that.
Yeah, definitely. And who's going to be consuming this data in the 30 years? I would bet you that it's mostly going to be machines rather than humans.
Exactly.
And they do need to understand this data, and they need to be able to go deep and actually reason on it. And the best way to do it is knowledge graphs. Like all of the major companies that we speak of in Silicon Valley, like Uber, for example, they've built their own internal knowledge graph for a reason, because they use it to learn too many things about what's going on with their product. But that is obviously within the Uber realm. But think of how many of these interesting things can be built if you look at the global realm. If you can connect the Uber knowledge graph with the Google knowledge graph, they still obviously retain privacy, what they don't want to share. But that's not to say that they cannot share some verifiable computation-based information. Maybe I can prove something to your knowledge graph that you really need. You don't really need the data. You just need some sort of
proof that it exists.
Yeah, maybe exactly. Maybe you just need that, and it's very powerful. I'm super excited.
Could go beyond global one day. We could be in Mars in 10 years. Ooh.
Yeah.
This is the Starfleet chain.
Elon Musk confirmed. No, I'm just kidding. So
depends on how fast Elon works.
Yeah, that guy works quick. Look at Doge. All right, so I'm going to go to the next question here. Given the nature of enterprise adoption of TRAC that we are likely to see going forward, do you believe there will be a full disconnect between price movement of BTC and TRAC in the future? And it's funny, I'm going to call OriginTrail toilet paper for this example. So so when we look like last March, right, when the Rona hit, we had bars shutting down, restaurants shutting down, we had stores closing, we had things going out of business. But what did really well? Toilet paper. everybody needed toilet paper, right? So say we do have a market crash at some point, right? Bitcoin's going down, everything's going down. If the ODN is being used in the scale that we think it is, you guys should be toilet paper, right? I mean, Bitcoin could keep going down, but as long as people need to use toilet paper, use the ODN, then it's going to just keep going up in value. Do you see that same type of logic in your head as far as adoption, as far as the Origin Trail and decoupling from these markets at some point?
And I would like to say, this is not a selfish question. This is highly debated by the community right now.
Yeah, a lot of debate. I think you guys are toilet paper. I really do. I think you can flourish on your own.
Yeah, right now the only thing I have in my head is how we could perhaps change the logo of OriginTrail, perhaps add the toilet paper inside, kind of making supply chains work together, and then the toilet paper.
Exactly.
Togetherness. Let's do something together.
Let's wipe our butts together. Yeah.
No, I think that there is something to it. We actually never noticed the bear market in terms of us not having jobs or us not having work to do. So the only kind of difference between bear and bull market is that bull market is somewhat more problematic in terms of there's a lot of noise, there are a lot of new kind of crazy ideas, which is good, but there is a lot of noise in the market. But generally, Trace Labs and OriginTrail, which is kind of the open source project of the Trace Labs, is equally thriving in either bear or bull market, which is clearly kind of detaching OriginTrail from perhaps other peer projects within crypto. We always have jobs, regardless of whether there is like bull, bear, recession, whatever. Knowledge will always be needed. Actually, structured information, connected information will always be needed, much like the toilet paper. I think it's a good analogy, pun intended. And perhaps right now we're in this amidst of all this craze. Everybody's becoming the best in terms of the how quickly they process transactions. Every project promises the best kind of possible outcomes, whereas we try to kind of bet on the mainstream kind of users, or at least creating positive impacts within traditional industries, which traditionally were not tapped into by other projects within the crypto, so the crypto peers. And there's a tremendous opportunity on this side, which not only allows us to detach ourselves from this crazy quote unquote world, which we love very much. We love the craziness of it. It gave life to OriginTrail. But in the future, we see that definitely OriginTrail is being detached from everything crazy that is going on within the crypto space. We love being here. We will keep on being here, but the main positive outcomes are being created in real life, and we are excited to see in the years going forward. Every single member of OriginTrail community, we believe, is going to be proud of being in the OriginTrail ecosystem so early on, because we are still in the early days. We as founders, we have kind of a 10-year journey after us already, but that was just merely creating fundamentals for the OriginTrail ecosystem, whereas the real kind of advancements start now when we detach from this problematic world of crypto, which is being plagued perhaps by all those crazy projects, hyper projects that come out of nothing, but do create certain negative outcomes in crypto. And having this multi-chain vision is going to actually allow us not only to tap into this pool of early adopters, and we do have a group of very much important early adopters already in OriginTrail ecosystem onboarded, like British Standards Institution. We also recently, the World Economic Forum tweeted about the crowdsourcing project we did with their support, and this is just the beginning. But perhaps it's quite telling to see that the early adopters are already very important companies. It's like mom and pops or like our relatives with our technology. It's actually serious companies, and these are only early adopters. And now just try to imagine what will happen when we transition to multi-chain, when we transition to Starfleet, to xDai, to Polkadot, and in the future, any other blockchain ecosystem can actually adopt the decentralized knowledge graph and organize data for their own ecosystem. So it's not only Trace Labs that is going to be agent evangelist for the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. Is going to be every sensible project that understands the value of the connected data, of the linked data. So at that point, we see that the attachment from the crypto will actually disappear, disintegrate. We already see this, but in the future, this will most probably happen very much spontaneously, because it's not only going to be dependent on us, it's going to be dependent on everybody who's seeing value in linked data. And we see, huge appetite from the outside. We see a lot of understanding of what knowledge graph technologies are bringing. We saw this with the WEF. We saw this with all the early adopters. Now we're seeing this with the baseline protocol. They are understanding, they are being educated that we're not competing. We are creating a field of competition. And when we have other projects actually understanding what we do, they are the ones creating or understanding which problems can be solved using decentralized knowledge graph. And they are de facto creating new markets for OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. And right now is the crucial moment with the staking, which is, by the way, going very well. We're at the 80% and surpassing that. This momentum that we're creating is very much important, because we are going to get rid of all the barriers which were there, kind of objective barriers in terms of cost, efficiency gains that are not here yet, but past multi-chain phase, we're going to have tremendous efficiency gains. And once we have that, we do expect to have kind of a hockey stick growth in terms of adoption because of the efficiency gains alone. So the economies of scale, let alone the economies of scope, when we add the knowledge tools that we discussed, when we add the data to knowledge services advancement. So there's so many things that we kind of feel they're going to happen pretty soon. And it's really great to be in this kind of within this historical context, because we're still very much early on. Every one of us, everybody joining the OriginTrail ecosystem, will in the future be able to see that we were here, like in a very much at the beginning.
Well, that's it's funny, and I tell people this might be like head in the clouds thinking, but like nodes one day could be like a career. You know what I mean? Like, they could be a primary source of income one day. I mean, we could be looking back 8 years and be like, man, I'm so glad I started that node up in, 2021, because here it is every day paying out all these jobs from 5 years that I've been holding, and I think it could be a retirement plan for people at some point. Like, and I think people need to realize this. Being early is huge.
It is. I mean, it is rewarding. And especially for those who do have understanding of the technology, and we are right now supporting through the Trace Alliance, and also through the knowledge base that we're creating, also with the help of initial Guinness, and then right now Famous Amos has joined the wagon, and we're getting some very cool remarks and good remarks from the Ivan on Tech Academy on the courses that were created thus far, not yet published, but the outputs are very appealing, and kudos to Amos, looks very good. So once we have that knowledge base, which is ready to be consumed by the outside world, the next phase is going to be very much easy to create the evangelist program, and everybody is going to be capable of utilizing the tools that were created within OriginTrail ecosystem, and apply those tools for various problems in the world. And we can see right now that tools are limited, because we cannot create an unlimited number of tools, but problems are not limited. They are, we cannot even come up with all the problems, let alone we cannot solve all the problems. And this is why right now, also within the Trace Alliance and the guys the work that you guys are doing, we're going to be capable of going from the projects that are being mainly served by the Trace Labs as a core developer, and also core evangelist, and perhaps core engine for the adoption. We're going to transition from here to giving every individual tools and everything needed, the rules to start building their own businesses using OriginTrail, and being capable of creating more value out of data, more value out of information, perhaps is going to be the most important business and most lucrative business of the future. It's going to be the new oil industry.
Exactly. We're going to be running oil rigs, like we and Amos say all the time. We're going to be the biggest oil pioneers you've ever seen in the data industry.
100%.
I'm going to ask this next question, then I'm going to pass the mic to my homie Amos, because I'm going to word this one in the best way I can possible, just because I need to mentally understand this a little better too, and it's been a big question. When we get down to, so it says, what do you think the projected yield will be for those of us who will solely be putting track and liquidity pools or knowledge pools, not running any nodes? And so I'm going to give a generic example here, and this might be more, I'm not looking for a numbers answer or a dollar answer. I guess there's got to be some code behind this, right? So let's say the 6 of us in this call right now each have 1,000 tokens in the pool, okay? And we have 6,000 tokens in the pool, and we have jobs coming in. How is the distribution working as far as knowing where the tokens are pulling from exactly? So forget percentage APR or anything like that, but how is this going to be, what is the logic behind how these tokens are going to be used and allocated? So each one of us has 1,000 tokens. We have 6,000 tokens in the pool. Let's say 1,000 jobs come in. How do we know whose tokens it's using as the jobs come out? This might be a Branimir more question. Again, I'm trying to bring this more from a code perspective than I am like a dollars and cents perspective.
This is a more of a contrary to the previous question. It cannot have a short and long answer. It can only have a long answer, and yeah, this long answer is probably going to be definitely best addressed to the specific RFC, because I understand where you're getting at. So the question there being is, if you have a pool and then you have some, let's say, percentage of ownership in that pool, and then some of that token goes into some jobs, then how does this whole calculation work?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, in the sense of thinking about how that goes is, it's a little bit more complicated than to explain sort of without going into the equations, but the principles there being that it's going to be according to, obviously, towards how much contribution, towards how big of a job, and how long of a time frame. But essentially, it's going to have to be answered through, let's say, a similar formula to what you have already been seeing around, let's say, the formulas the nodes use to calculate the price for jobs. And in those terms, there's going to be, because this is just one formula for one service, because this involves 2 or more different services, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So I'm unfortunately not able to give a more clear answer. Mm-hmm. But the point there being is that it will have to make sense, because if the solution does not provide, if it's not, let's say, interesting enough, then obviously it won't be useful or won't survive in that sense. So
right, because I imagine there's some math here, right? Like it's some very advanced math that's going to go on here. You can't just have a round robin, right? But at the same point, there needs to be more benefit for having weighted averages.
Yes.
Higher per person.
Yes, yes, but definitely not round robin.
Yeah. So basically, the short answer is let's wait for more RFCs to come out to see what that's going to look like.
And apart from just waiting, once the RFCs are out in the first draft form, actually you can jump in and contribute, and you can provide feedback, and not just feedback, opinions, ideas. Mm-hmm. We would like to hear everything that the community has thought of inside, because there potentially might be things that the creators of the RFC, which will be from the working groups, will actually, obviously they're not almighty, so there might be quite a lot of feedback that could be useful from anybody. And we're looking at how to make this process of crafting RFCs more inclusive, because at the moment, I wouldn't say it's not good, but it can definitely be improved. So in terms of how easy it is to participate, It definitely there is going to be improvements on that front, especially now that we have a new wave of RFCs coming out, and it's going to be exciting. We're going to get close to the mark of 20 RFCs relatively soon, because we also have some legacy ones that need to be uploaded as well and reorganized in the coming period. So it's going to be very interesting, and it's going to help, I hope, everybody jump in and contribute even more.
Yeah, we even get some of those baseline guys. Some of those guys were working on like the hydrogen collider in like Switzerland or something like that. Get those guys involved. I bet they can take a peek and have an opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody who has anything to bring to the ecosystem, why not? We will be sharing it with them and asking for help or just contributions or bringing their solutions, because some of these things will require components that are already been developed. Oh, there's more of us on the call.
Yeah, I'm getting invaded. Sorry about that. Amos, you can take this next question.
Yeah, no, I mean, when he said 20 RFCs, I immediately opened up my GitHub to see how many RFCs I already posted. I'm like, that's quite a jump. Anyway, you know what? Let's hop on to the next question. So this person really wanted to know more about, all right, you know what? I'll tell you the truth. This person really wants you to drop some bombs, okay? They want to know what's going on pretty much with Oracle. What's the extension of OriginTrail acting as this trusted or this data lake of verifiable information for Oracle? They say that it's a pretty big job, you know, it's a pretty big deal, which I agree. But is that more? Is there more to this relationship with OriginTrail and Oracle? Do we have something else that we can be excited about maybe in the future? I don't know if you guys can talk about that, but you know, yeah.
All right, I'll take it. Yeah, it's always a tricky one, but I mean, it's an exciting one as well, right? So Oracle, obviously, the integration of or the solution that was presented for that connects permissionless with permissioned environments. That's very, very cool and very insane. Even at Liftoff, we had the representatives coming in, showcasing and speaking to it, which is, you know, a great validation. What also I believe it alluded or showed to the OriginTrails community is the fact that Oracle is not looking at that solely as some kind of like a one-off thing that was just done once, but rather looks at it more as a thing to understand and thing to be worked on and kind of expanded in the future. That being said, we look at that even more so like that, and I'd kind of be I'm sure there's going to be more to be said on this topic over the course of the next couple of months that we'll be able to share, and just seeing how really the things, where the chips fall, and how does the thing work together. But obviously it's the complementarity of both suites, even if you look at it like that, right? So, you know, Oracle's not only the blockchain platform, but also the entire offering of Oracle, kind of what there is there, and how that fits within, or how does it complement, or how OriginTrail complements what's being done there, I think can answer some of the thinking and the logic behind what the approaches, at least that currently are being considered are. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure this can sprout quite a few ideas in terms of how decentralized knowledge graph can really deliver a lot of value in this context, and we are excited to see this happen in the future.
I mean, in
so
support
I hope I didn't give you but,
no, that's perfect. If you think about it, when OpenPKG was released, when you guys released that article, you guys already mentioned that BSI themselves were like taking a look, you know, they were like, hey, if this develops, maybe we can do something with it. So I assume probably the same thing is going on with Oracle. Of course.
Yeah, I mean, it just sometimes it takes, you know, there's different timelines that are taken on, and there's different business contexts that kind of need to be taken into account. So, but yeah, like we always, whenever we do something or whenever we focus on either a new development or a new tool or something like that coming up, it's always within the context of having someone that we can validate this with, as it's been forever. So
awesome.
I saw Žiga unmute his mic. I didn't know if Žiga wanted to drop some wisdom on us there.
Yeah, I did wanted to, but I'm tweeting about the toilet paper. Really love the idea. You got me excited.
Look, did you see the response I put to your tweet? Somebody already memed a track. That didn't take.
Yeah. I think we have a competition now as to who's going to create the bear logo.
Best meme. Nice.
Yeah, but the jokes aside, no, it's
our design team is not allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, we're keeping our design team nonetheless, because for many other proprietary things which are needed to kind of create additional enablers on top of the open source tools, you need some extra services, and definitely keeping design team there. They're amazing. Yeah, and with respect to Oracle, I mean, it's a long-term collaboration that started I think already in 2018, the end of 2018, and what is going to be even more interesting to see with respect to Oracle is the collaboration between Trace Labs and Oracle, which is not always of an open source nature. Actually, it's quite rarely of an open source nature, because we're talking about the usability pillar there, and it's going to be highly interesting to see the adoption uptake once we have the network operating system ready and underpinned by a vastly more scalable OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph supported by many chains. So once we have reached that stage, by then also the network operating system is going to be matured enough to be adopted within the Oracle partnership network, which is a very vast network of some 17,000 different vendors, including the likes of Deloitte, and it's a huge network there. And by having network operating systems supported through the Oracle marketplace of solutions, we are counting on a vast exposure towards those different service providers which have a global footprint. So this is something that is going to be very exciting to see once we have achieved that phase. How will that actually catalyze the synergistic and the network effect, which is then of course going to be visible in the tangible adoption.
And what's funny is Hyperledger.
But this is just Oracle. Of course, there are so many other things. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, so Hyperledger is used by everyone, right? So IBM's Food Trust is built on Hyperledger. So once you start having these capabilities in Oracle, they spread out through all these different enterprise blockchain systems.
Yeah.
So whatever works for Oracle could work for IBM. I mean, it's Hyperledger.
I mean, OriginTrail is, as you said, is becoming as ubiquitous as toilet paper. Yeah. And for the enterprise adoption, there is no way to connect information from different kind of data pools or different data silos without OriginTrail. And there is no other company, especially not company within the decentralized mode, to be delivering decentralized knowledge graph capable of connecting data from multiple data silos while allowing companies to retain control over their data. So OriginTrail as kind of the middleware is becoming, very much ubiquitous. And same way as every home needs a toilet paper, every good enterprise is going to need OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. And God damn it, I cannot get rid of that analogy.
I think we're onto something here. I think we're onto some marketing stuff here. Me and Amos were just talking about earlier how I got to get better at answering live questions. So I've never actually used this button. What does this do? Answer live. Well, anyway, when will we hear about SFC validators? Is there anything you can share there, or even any snippet of maybe one of them that you have committed yet? Is there any progress there?
Yeah. The Starfleet validators are now in a process of being vetted and in the process of confirmation. We cannot spill any beans with that respect, because it's a rather sensitive process, and nothing is confirmed until everything is confirmed. SFC validators are all about the credibility, and once we have completed the process, only share more information. But we're looking at a fairly kind of diversified bunch of companies coming from different industries, also coming from both the crypto world and also from the enterprise world, from the community, of course, as well. And we see that the number itself, but not only the number itself, but also the different DNA of those validators is going to vouch for what we believe as sufficient credibility for the network, for the SFC network.
Is it safe to say, though, without, I know you can't spill beans, but maybe some of the validators, we've heard their name mentioned alongside that you guys have mentioned before, at least having some association with, or would these be things, names we haven't heard before? Okay.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
Both. Yeah.
Oh, both. Right, nice. I like surprises. Can't wait for the beans to spill. I like beans. I'm gonna need the toilet paper after I get those beans. But so this is a really long question, but I'm gonna just wrap it up in a nutshell. So Optimism rolls out next month, we heard, for Ethereum, right? And this is obviously probably more for you, Branimir, unless Žiga took some classes when I wasn't watching and maybe can answer this. But so Optimism's rolling out next month, and it's supposed to make allegedly Ethereum that much more cheaper to use. It's supposed to be, an L2 solution that's going to make gas a lot cheaper. Who knows if that's true or not? Have you been following this Optimism tech that's going to be launching next month? And do you actually see jobs coming back to Ethereum because of it, or we still have to wait for things like IEP 1559, or we got to wait for the full launch of ETH 2.0? So is ETH dead in the water until 2.0, or do some of these things like Optimism or EIP 1559 seen as enough to get gas prices down where we could see ETH jobs again?
That's a very good question. It's something we definitely are following as much as we can, both in terms of roll-up type of solutions, but also other type of different ETH, let's say, scaling L2s. And there's definitely interesting things coming to market. One of the key points there being that in order for really strongly considering these solutions for the ODN, one of the key things is that it has to prove itself in the wild. Let's say that in very short terms. So not to say anything bad about anybody, but there's been a lot of projects being in development for a long time. A lot of the ideas that have been sort of looked at as the solutions for the scaling problem, and ever since the last bull market. So and since today, we are always a little bit like this much away from having them in production, right? So we're kind of cautious on being, diving deep into something that before seeing how stable and how useful it is. For example, one of the examples where you can see this has happened is the xDai chain. If you look at xDai, the whole ecosystem around xDai has been there for years. It has been security audited multiple times by major companies such as QuantStamp, but also not just QuantStamp. It has a community that's been active for a very long time, and the technology has reached the technology readiness level that we consider is relevant for the ODN. Will there be other solutions that will reach this level? I hope so. I'm very positive that there will be some. And yeah, such solutions are definitely interesting. And from the perspective of ODN, it's been designed in such a way that it can interact with such solutions, because it's been designed from the get-go to be a multi-chain network. And if you look at, or if you've tried the Warp testnet, you will see that it seamlessly speaks with multiple chains. In a way, it doesn't care, and because the differences in chains are abstract from it, at least in this current implementation. If there's going to be chains that deliver more, then there might be a bit of the difference on this abstraction to use more of what the other chain offers or another solution. But from that perspective, all of these candidate solutions are in consideration, with the caveat that they need to, first, we need to see them working and in a very reliable way. We're working here with enterprises, and all of the, I cannot even begin to say how much time and energy it took to vet OriginTrail as technology, in order to be used by enterprises such as BSI, for example. There's been penetration tests, there's been all kinds of tests, all kinds of committees looking at the technology. And I mean, it's that sort of time that you would rather be building, but it's necessary. And a lot of these new technologies kind of need to go through those hoops. And having that said, that is the key differentiator. Ever since we once we pass that point, then all of these new solutions are absolutely very interesting to try and incorporate and somehow integrate with the ODM.
Well, real quick, let me just jump in here. This is tied to the whole thing that the team says, we believe we are 2 years ahead. Well, this isn't just because it's a technological marvel, which it is. The OriginTrail is completely unique and decentralized and whatnot. But there's literally a sheer amount of testing time that has to take place by default. Even if your technology is great and works, there's a certain amount of testing that has to be done. So even if you do come out with the next great thing, the OT team, you guys believe you are ahead in that respect?
Absolutely. It's because just to get the commitment of companies such as the BSI to jump into this lengthy process, and this process is not measured in weeks. This is measured at least in months, but actually it's been going over a year now. There's different committees that are looking, committees such as technical design authorities, security committees, all of these people who are, they need to approve the technology before anybody can use it in any use case. This is just the way how bigger corporations work. That makes them more stable. That makes them slower as well, because there's a lot of processes. So, getting adopted doesn't just mean, oh, today we built a small app and some BSI starts using it. It's years of work. And that's why when we see such implementations or not, you immediately know that this is a year behind, or is it just a proof of concept, or is it a production solution? The path between these two is measured in years in terms of time.
For the sake of time, Ace, don't beat me up after the call. I have to steal this time here, this question, because we're running out of time and I don't want to miss this question. Well, there's two of them I kind of want to squeeze in, but this one, the Alpha Sigma report, value track at like $3 today and $101 by like 2024 or something crazy like that. Now for me, I consider that complete FUD, because $1,000 to $2,000 track, I will hold, I will stand by it. I don't care what anyone says. That's my belief. So does the team feel like these valuations by the ASC report was fair? Do you see that growing? And of course, we're not expecting you to say, oh yeah, $10 track by 2020. More so like, do you feel like it's fair? Is this a fair estimation, or do you expect even grander things? From my perspective, putting $100 and $101 on something that can literally bridge the gap between Google and every other decentralized knowledge graph out there, can support the global supply chain, which Žiga was mentioning is like $75 trillion just in US dollars. That seems, yeah. So can you guys speak to that?
I think it's fun.
I think it's fun, huh? Oh.
I think it's fun.
Right, it's fun. It has to be. Okay.
I'm personally not happy until we are not seen amongst the five biggest biggest crypto ecosystems. Mainly because we have adoption in the mainstream. It's expanding. We're solving a meaningful problem, and everything less than top 5 we will consider as a failure in the years going forward.
Wow,
enough said. Enough said.
Top,
that was
well,
it.
Tomaž just passed out. We lost him on the stream. He was so excited. There you go. I'm going to answer one of this live question. By the time boarding closes, things will become very much juicy for the stakeholders not yet involved. I think they're quoting you, Žiga, at one point. Could you elaborate on that?
I will need to understand a bit more about this question. Juicy?
I think someone said once that you said by the time boarding closes. I think this might have been from last office hours. By the time boarding closes, things will become very juicy for the stakeholders not yet involved. So I guess what they're asking.
I remember that. I think Žiga was talking about we were asking about the potential returns and whatnot, and Žiga said that by the end of staking, we'll start hearing more about like what's going on.
Gotcha. Okay.
I remember that one.
So okay, so when staking ends, do you expect us to hear a little more news on how the network's going to be used per se, or I guess that's probably what they're getting.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I mean, we have the development updates to be revealed as we move closer to the kind of the ending of the staking period. There are other exciting news about the adoption of the OriginTrail. I believe that was even said before the xDai integration announcement. So that's also one of the ingredients that are going to contribute to the juiciness of this phase. Yeah, I think on a high level that would be approximately it. But definitely zooming out, the great things, the greatest shifts start happening once we have the multi-chain phase enabled, because we can then pull the meaningful data and the meaningful also we can see the metrics. We can see the multi-chain effect to really reflect on the metrics, such as the total graph size. Right now we're close to 10 million, if I'm not mistaken, aiming for 100 million by the end of this year. So
more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is something that we can kind of see based on the things that are going on currently. But of course, looking at the history, how the history behaved, we always kind of were able to surpass the expectations, and we're also expecting to see that to happen. But of course, we need to be looking at the network effect to happen, and we have the kind of the steps that are leading us towards the network effect also in place, such as the knowledge proliferation, the evangelism program. So this is where also the things get juicy. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and this other question kind of relates to this, so I'll put it in now. Is so do you believe Starfleet or xDai will have more jobs in 2021? So obviously xDai is going to be kind of primed and ready to go sooner. That's no mystery. So what happens once Starfleet goes live? Do we kind of see xDai taper off? Should we expect to see both chains constantly being used this year? What do you see having more usage in this year?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to have any chain that's going to be underpinning OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph to be used. That's the idea. To be talking about the proportions, so what is going to be used more, what is going to be used less. I think it would put us into that position where we would arbitrarily say, so this should be used more, this should be used less. And we are not in a position, and we don't have that desire to be the ones deciding, so this more, this less, because that would not be fair, and it would also go against the principles. But the idea definitely is to have all the chains used.
Great. Someone had a marketing question.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I definitely, you know me, I like to hype.
Yeah, I know.
Come on,
absolutely.
Bro. Give me my job. Anyway,
this is your area.
Now I'm playing. So we know that obviously Trace Labs is its own entity, OriginTrail, et cetera, and there's marketing for each brand. But I don't really want to ask a marketing question that seems, oh, you're gonna guys market today. That seems, once the staking is done and everything is running and things are looking great, does the team have like a planned action for like global, let's take this thing, just like all hands on deck, let's go every news outlet or something like that? Who knows? I'm just asking, is that the plan after things have more settled down and development is more stable and such?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are two approaches towards marketing. You have a more pull approach, whereby you clearly identify what is the quality news, what is the quality content that people are going to consume because it's servicing them. And this pull approach is something that we're more in favor of, as opposed to the push approach, where we would hypothetically pay 10, 20, 100 influencers for them to spread the news, to push the news, etc. So this is the kind of the marketing that we will never go into, because we believe it's unsustainable. So someone needs to pay for that, and someone needs to pay for the push marketing to happen. And it is effective to an extent, but it's not sustainable, because if you're not pushing quality content, if you're just pushing something just to get attention, you're definitely not doing yourself a favor or the community a favor. And this goes across the board for all the entities of OriginTrail ecosystem. Quality always before quantity. Not paying influencers to like just spread the news, share naked NFTs. This is something that we're not going into, and there is a reason why we're not going into it. Besides the sustainability, there is also the credibility and reputation that we need to be mindful of. If we were to go and employ similar means to other projects within the same industry, then the news associated with the likes of WEF, BSI, Oracle, and other successful and big companies would not have been possible, because we would essentially burn all the credibility as we go. So from the outside, saying OriginTrail has no problem marketing, or something like that, it's kind of perhaps very easy to jump and produce such a statement, because it's very difficult to understand that we are in the middle of an interplay between different groups of stakeholders that we need to cater to, and we need to equip them with information. And at the same time, we're the single source of truth. So we need to be mindful that at the same time, we need to cater to to stakeholders which are interested perhaps more into the price action news, perhaps more interested in like what's going on with the things which are more connected to OriginTrail ecosystem, to this stakeholder that perhaps is more or less present in Telegram. But at the same time, on the other side, we must not be offending perhaps someone, or must not be tarnishing our reputation for the enterprises. So there is always that fine line that we need to be respecting, and we are doing this. And from that standpoint, we're highly happy with the way things are going with respect to the marketing efforts. That said, we're looking for ways of how we can amplify the marketing efforts, so still maintain our focus on the quality aspect of the news, of the content, but at the same time amplifying so that the quality news actually have the outreach the quality news deserves. It's a challenge. This is, of course, not something that you can achieve overnight. And this is also something that you cannot achieve by merely pouring resources into that direction. But it will be achieved because we see that there are quite a lot of outlets interested in quality content rather than just spreading the news because it's hype, etc.
Well, yeah,
that answers the question.
I say all the time that there's no better marketing than people making money. And if nodes are cranking out jobs and people are getting jobs and they're earning TRAC tokens, what better marketing than that? I mean, at that point, you are toilet paper. You don't have to market toilet paper. We need it. We know that. We're going to go out and buy toilet paper. So, I mean, what better marketing than jobs?
To add to that, I mean, we have like stakeholders, partners, supporters, that have the highest possible credibilities within their respective communities. Like GS1, Branimir is going to have 2 presentations exposing 2 solutions which are beyond state of the art, not only within crypto, also outside crypto, and then enterprise within supply chain space. That is now, gaining a new shape with kind of an expanded stakeholders that are going to be using those solutions. So that's something that is very much exciting. And we are the only company and also the only ecosystem that is being exposed to such an important community. So using that as a benchmark, there is no better marketing than this. On the other side, we have WEF sharing what we have achieved through the trusted repository for COVID-19 essentials to some of their 4 million followers on Twitter, to some of their 3 million followers on Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. So perhaps using that as a measurement, we are doing a fantastic job. that said, it can still be 10x fantastic.
Awesome.
Yes. I do have a quick live question. Of course, this is live, so someone is asking pretty much, when will we start seeing the common farmer? Let's say I'm a farmer, the common farmer. When will the common farmer be able to just attach something to the ODN and do whatever they're doing in there? When does that happen?
Yeah, that's perhaps a question that we were most often asked some 10 years ago when we went into the supply chain transparency field, and our vantage point was food supply chains. Yet soon after, we figured out that although the technology components make sense for the agri-food sector is still a low margin item kind of sector, or food industry is a low margin item sector. So we need to make technology sustainable and affordable enough for farmers, and not only farmers, for all the stakeholders within food supply chains, full value chains, to be able to use those solutions. And by going into other verticals of supply chains, and even going past supply chains, we were able to achieve that the technology itself is more affordable for food supply chains as well, because we got this effects from the economies of scope. That said, the farmers are going to be able to use OriginTrail on a daily basis once they're not even aware that they're using OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. And when that happens, they're still going to be interacting with the existing legacy systems they use, their existing equipment they use for daily farming operations. So the adoption for the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph to reach, let's say, millions of farmers in EU or elsewhere is going to go through the already existing legacy systems. And that's why we are so fond of semantic interoperability, fond of using standards, fond of using open source technologies, because once we have a well-rounded solution, it's going to be those who are already servicing farmers that are going to be equipping them with the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph.
Yeah, and with things like the smarter food safety blueprint coming out by the FDA, for example, you have to think at some point that these small farmers are going to somehow be incentivized even by governments to comply with, some of these regulations. They're not going to be able to do it cheap and on their own all the time. So I imagine there's going to be some sort of assistance with this stuff in order to comply with these new requirements. And
this is also one of the goals of the food safety marketplace. One of the biggest agri-food projects that we're involved in is how to make it more cost efficient for farmers to comply with certification procedures without having to submit different reports to different auditing bodies for different retailers. So making it like 10x more efficient for them using the OriginTrail and also other technologies that are coming together within that project. And it's going to be very interesting to see the results of that project, and some of kind of very good results we're already seeing right now. We are working with not only with the stakeholders relevant for the the certification part, like TÜV Austria and other regional TÜVs, but also with technological companies such as Ontotext, and they're also involved in the knowledge graph technologies and the semantic interoperability. So there is a lot of spillover effects. Branimir can also perhaps serve you with more details as to how the collaboration looks like in there. But the main point here is that we have several tools, OriginTrail being just one of the tools, which are now coming together, and they are together going to show the greatest multiplication effect. And in that case, this is going to be resulting in positive impacts for the agricultural and farming sector.
Oh, awesome. And it from an adoption standpoint, I mean, obviously that's going to help bring this greater adoption is all these lower barrier to entries and the requirements that are going to be put forth for these companies. So it's good to see that as those barrier entries get lower, we're going to see the ODN kind of flourish more and become more widely used. So speaking of adoption, what do you consider success in adoption? Do you want every company globally using the ODN, or are you going to consider it success if you have broad European coverage only, or say high adoption in the rail industry, but nowhere else? What looks good to you? So what's the goal? What do you consider success to say we did it? I mean, are you looking for global adoption? Are we looking at just the EU? Do you see the US starting to open up more to these technologies? Do you see is success to you guys global adoption of the ODN?
Yeah, definitely it's going to be horizontal, not just one vertical, not just one geographical place. Mainly because the tools are going to be limited. They need to be servicing like many verticals. They need to be applicable to many jurisdictions, unless you're China and you're imposing certain very strict limitations. But even that, even then, it should be useful. And we are going to be considering this as a success when anyone with a problem that we didn't come up can be using this set of tools for solving X problem within supply chains, outside of supply chains. So this is where we're going to consider this as a success. Right now, perhaps in a timeline towards reaching that success, we are still in a phase. We still consider this as a good standing, but nevertheless, we are still in the phase where Trace Labs is the main the main motor behind the adoption, and also the main motor behind the development of the OriginTrail. So once we go past that, we're also going to be seeing individuals, organizations solving problems that we didn't identify using OriginTrail knowledge graph. And this is when we're going to consider this like a global success.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do a couple quick ones. Then we can wrap up because we're already getting pretty late. Scan for UK coming. This was someone asked in the live chat. The Brad Lowry interview, we saw there was some sort of mention between maybe some scan type implementation that's going to happen in the UK. Anything you can share there, or is it still kind of hush hush?
Yeah.
Tomaž always gets stuck with the ones.
So the good thing is, yeah. So just a shortly. The things that we've done in the previous years, we see now that the same components, not only the protocol and the network itself, but also the business logic, the way OriginTrail was implemented in the past, the same thing is going to be, we're going to be able to replicate that, which is going to create a lot of efficiencies for us as the company, and also for the overall adoption efforts for OriginTrail in the future. And kind of scanning or giving properties that we devised for that particular use case for other use cases across the globe, we see that this is going to be more present not only within that UK scenario, but also perhaps somewhere else. And we're seeing that. And that particular case, we see that is very much close to the UK Innovate project. And you now see with the UK exiting the European Union, there's a huge problem to kind of make all the measures that companies are undertaking in order to maintain their regulatory compliance. Everything is becoming more costly, and the challenge that we're trying to solve here using the scan-like solutions is to help companies make those measures more current, so do not spend more energy. And now a lot of energy is being spent. There's literally the milk is being spoiled at the border between UK and EU, because no one knows how to comply with all the new things that that have to be complied with from the side of mostly by the UK companies. So there's a huge problem being created as a result of Brexit. And perhaps just roughly, this is where scan-like solutions might help alleviate or perhaps even totally solve those problems for UK exporters and also importers from elsewhere to the UK.
I just want to say that while you were talking, someone just put 2 million TRAC into the staking contract. I just got a notification on my computer. Woo! I think I know who that is, but I'll keep that quiet.
Was it a single transaction?
It was 2. So that's all right. 2 mil more.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
This one is more future based. It's very quick. we know that the OriginTrail decentralized network and the knowledge graph itself was really a shift in humanity, regardless of people want to admit that or not. It is. So grow up and deal with it. So we're talking about the knowledge economy. This is another big shift, literally. So what is after that? Have you guys thought about anything after the knowledge economy? What can this get bigger? Like what are you guys thinking? How big is that Satoshi brain, Branimir?
All right, since you mentioned me, I guess I can hop on this one. Yeah, I mean it comes in layers. Like first you build the bottom layer, and then you have a foundation to build on, and then the stack kind of grows on top of that. And that's where we started with the OriginTrail way back then. Realized how the key problem really is interconnectivity if we want to go anywhere else. And that's where linked data and the knowledge graph was born. And from that moment on, we then were able to solve a lot of the issues. Then the next layer of issues came up, and then it was really how do you effectively facilitate this exchange of data between, or really knowledge between actors that might not necessarily want to use something which a lot of people are trying to use, like, for example, a shared ledger in the blockchain sense, be it at a public ledger, so you cannot share something, or a private blockchain like Hyperledger Fabric with its own set of drawbacks. And so once we came there, and once this was understood, that obvious next step was the tools that will facilitate this new knowledge economy. And then what comes after is really what the key point of using this knowledge is from the perspective of that particular user. I can only say that it's pretty much obvious right now, whoever's been within this industry, that it's become probably the most valuable asset in terms of the digital world. The companies that are the most valuable are, in fact, the most valuable because they've been able to be very clever around the data that they aggregate and collect, and enabling these tools to be available for everybody, for all the businesses, is going to be on type of shift as enabling every single business in the world to use computers or to use the internet. And then, so the next steps will be in the same level, and bringing it further to the knowledge economy is going to be how this, let's say, economy performs and co-develops together with the other technologies like AI, for example, which there's been a lot of talk around AI, a lot of hype as well, hype being sometimes not justified, but it's definitely moving along. And the perfect substrate for it being highly structured, large data sets. There's a lot of people that are, I speak often with, which are involved with machine learning, for example, that would say, yeah, we got this amazing algorithm, but we don't have the data, enough data to put through it to teach it what it needs to learn. But trust me, it works. And yeah, that's that part we kind of solved. But it's always been an issue of like getting the right data set, and it's absolutely an issue because you weren't able to do that because you didn't have the right tools, knowledge economy tools, the knowledge graph, which will help you integrate data and then put it through an algorithm. So it's going to be very interesting, in that's just one of the directions. But it's going to come from, you know, building things. And one of, for example, Žiga mentioned briefly that one of such solutions where the exchange of knowledge is already happening is really the rail industry and the EPCS repository that you might have seen. We've been demoing it on one of the latest, the 2 GS1 events so far, on the liftoff event. And there's going to be a demo, another demonstration of it on this Monday, actually, which is the next version, the extended version of what has been seen before, which is now going to be used in production by 9 European rail industry companies. So that's going to be SBB, the Swiss railway company, actually another rail operator. And then other companies that provide services for them, because they need to exchange information on security of certain processes that they operate. In this particular case, several key things, but weldings being, I think, the most important ones. So they want to track all of these activities going on within their supply chains. So yeah, this is going to be the next stage of the EPCS repository in the rail industry. But this EPCS repository is not only capable to cater to the rail industry, it can cater to any other industry in the supply chain, because EPCS is not industry specific.
I just want to say that I called it. Anyone right now in the OriginTrail community chat can go back 7 months ago and see Amos talking about OriginTrail's AI implementation and how it would be perfect for contextual data and AI synergies. I called it. All right, I'll
Branimir dropping bombs. Of all the people on the team, Branimir bringing the bombs today. Let's all right, I'm gonna wrap up.
I told you ASC report was fun.
Yeah. I'm gonna do one more question and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah.
What has been the biggest expected challenge the team has had since V4? What's the largest unexpected challenge? What does the team believe next largest expected challenge will be? And I know you don't know what you don't know, but when we look at previous challenges, what was the biggest challenge that you guys had to overcome in the last, well, even say like couple years? I mean, it could be last year. I mean, gas was a big one, right? I mean, that was a huge one. But what was the biggest expected or unexpected challenge? And what do you think could be potentially the next big challenge?
Yeah, I mean, there are kind of multifaceted challenges, especially in our record. Perhaps previous biggest challenge was to understand that the adoption is the one that really counts, and not only adopt the approach towards adopting towards not only building the OriginTrail that makes sense, but also making sure that companies are using it, that we have relevant projects in which OriginTrail capabilities and our ability are being honed in order to build something which is being validated, not just developed or hyped as we approach quote-unquote bull markets. And as we assumed that approach, we saw that not everybody was happy with that approach. Because in this space, it's all about, you should be like vocal, you should be, I don't know what, perhaps not even build shit, but just, talk about it. It does not sound intuitive, but one needs to have guts in order to sell and in order to actually utilize the technology that is being built. Because as you do that, you need to invest more efforts. You really need to expand and learn, and also have the team that is capable to following through. And perhaps that was the biggest challenges that we had. So come up with the strength and come up with the wisdom within the team, and then also proliferate that wisdom through the ecosystem, through the community, so that everybody's understanding in terms of we need adoption, we need to make sure that the only thing that counts is to have the technology being utilized. Again, it might sound non-intuitive right now from this position, but it was not that obvious to everybody that we need to undertake that approach. So that was perhaps the past challenge that we had, and we successfully overcome. Branimir, Tomaž, would you go into current, future challenges? What would your vision of that be?
I'll go ahead, Bram.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the previous challenge. Well, personally, a challenge was, apart from gas, we should not, I guess everybody knows that was the challenge, but one of the things that has, from the kind of a technical side, been a challenge is the difficulty to explain through the noise, because the bull market, although it brings its good sides, brings an enormous amount of noise when it comes to speaking about technology. Like if you're going and trying to explain, people sort of get this notion that they know, or sometimes they try to hide that they don't know. So start speaking about blockchain, supply chain, how this, how they understand or not, and then it tends to be hard to, click. At least that was prior, not at this point in time, but like previously, that was a big an issue because it's just building on a foundation of either misconceptions or hype or things that are semi-understood, and then you come and you introduce this new approach. Is requires a lot of effort and attention from the other person, and
yes,
and in that sense, that was one of the kind of the challenges that when some people would get specifically from the technical perspective. I personally really enjoyed it. That's one of the reasons why I like the baseline call, because you could see that people from from the industry, after they hear you out, they tend to start getting moment. To get exactly, which we all got when we first got introduced to, for example, blockchain, because at first everything is kind of hazy, and all of a sudden, the aha, okay, now I can no longer think about anything else.
Well, I'll be honest. When I made that video, I did it out of selfishness for myself, because I was so annoyed with people not understanding what was so unique about OriginTrail and always trying to explain it. And I know exactly what you mean, because from a community perspective, there's only so many times I can try to explain to people why OriginTrail is so unique and different than a VeChain. And when people say, well, VeChain does that, or Morpheus does it, I'm like, well, no, they don't. And so believe me, I mean, we still deal with that today. So I get what you're saying as far as that challenge is. Like they have to be willing to understand in order to understand. And that's a very hard thing to do when it's very one-sided. And that's partially why I made that video that time, is because I was sick of just repeating myself like a broken record. And so I totally get what you're saying with those challenges.
I was not expecting Branimir to even say, I really appreciate that answer, because I really was not expecting that from you. You really put some effort into answering that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I guess it's my turn as well.
Yeah.
So I think the useful way of looking at challenges, especially past ones, or what often is the case, is no matter how difficult they were, when they're past you, you tend to look at them as minor because there's others that you focus on in the future. And the ones that you focus on in the future, they're also relative, because they're relative towards the ambition or the vision that you have with what you're trying to achieve. And you can really, really, really quickly turn them into opportunities. So whilst the gas in itself, it's a challenge, and it's a big challenge to overcome. But in the vision of making OriginTrail decentralized graph becoming that substrate of whatever, and we build the vision with the wisdom on in the future, and becoming that ubiquitous tool in solving all these challenges that we are discussing with in terms of business challenges this addresses. The gas challenge in itself is just an opportunity to make OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph more available to multiple environments. And at the same time, whilst solving that problem, you're also creating a lot of opportunities for future growth. So it's more about looking at challenges through the prism of what we're trying to achieve in the long run, and what's the vision of it, and how can we position the currently most maybe apparent issues that are around into making them an opportunity for long-term success. Yeah, personally, I guess my problem is finding the time to learn all the lyrics for Amos's songs, man. That's a big one,
That was actually the last question. That was the last question I was actually going to put. Someone says, do the team sometimes have parties blasting songs from Amos and singing along, or has the pandemic hindered that?
Somebody asked that as a question.
Yeah, they did, I'm telling you. All right, guys. Well, let's wrap up. We're an hour and 40 minutes in. I'm getting hungry, and I'm sure you guys are getting hungry too. So great office hours as always, and I'm so glad Amos jumped on this one too again. So we're going to probably be doing this. Yeah. You'll be joining me, I'm sure, every month.
Thanks for having me. Definitely, I'll be here anytime you guys have me.
Heck yeah, man. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See you soon.
Have a good one, guys.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Looking forward to the next one post staking period. We're reaching 100 million soon, so that's a huge stuff.
And next one, I'll have toilet paper behind me on my back.
I'll hold you to that.
All right, guys. Take care.
Bye bye.